My name is Simon Hunter and I run Simon Says Dance based in Edinburgh. I've used my time in lockdown to be a little bit more productive and start a new project called Simon Talks Dance. I'm going to be interviewing several males from different parts of the dance industry, from performers to choreographers, students and teachers. I want to know how they've succeeded in this industry and what obstacles they've had to overcome. In a world where there's still so much stigma attached to this subject, I want to delve into this idea of negativity and try bring some light to it to make it something a little bit more positive. As a male dance teacher, I feel that my purpose is not only to teach the next generation of dancers, but also to inspire more boys to dance. The dance industry would not survive without males, so with lots of support, with lots of different campaigns all around the world, I want to talk about this on a more local and interactive platform. Now today I was super excited because I'm getting to talk to Mr. Murray Grant. He was my teacher when I was at MGA and I think he's such an inspiration to a lot of males in Scotland. So he is Murray Grant. He is the founder and creative director of MGA Performing Arts in Edinburgh. He was a performer. He's performed internationally, including America, Europe and Australia. He's done shows like Jesus Christ Superstar and Saturday Night Fever. He is now also the director and the choreographer working for P&O Cruises, Marella Cruises, and many other European tours as well. Now, Murray is from Edinburgh, so let's see what he's got to say today. So, hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you surviving lockdown?
I am coping, thank you. I'm coping. It's actually, I find like I've got loads of different things and projects made me like a little bit more creative because as a creative person, you kind of get stuck. But yeah, I feel like I've been busy actually.
It's just trying to find that every day to get that little bit of motivation, isn't it? And once that comes, then it's quite good to be able to run away with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's like I'm seeing so many creative things happening online. It just is constantly inspiring me to go, oh, we should do this, we should do this. So it's obviously been very difficult, and I'm kind of isolating on my own as well because Andrew's away with the Royal Air Force. So it's been spending time on my own has been hard, but it also has given me time to really research and be creative. So yeah, so I've kind of found the good in it, which I think is all you can really do.
Yeah, exactly. In the negative situation, just find a little bits of positivity that can keep you going.
For sure.
So this is kind of why I started this project. I kind of feel like we can all kind of come together to try and find a negative situation, try and make it a little bit more positive. So what I'd like to do is kind of go back to when you first started dancing. So why did you even come across dance and how did you even get into it in the first place?
Well, that's going back quite a long time. So I first went into the Edinburgh Youth Theatre Company, EYTC. So I was kind of at primary school and stuff. I was involved in a couple of like school things, but nothing really big, and I quite enjoyed it. So about the age of 10, I joined Edinburgh Young Theatre Company, which was great. I mean, we'd done about 6 shows a year or something. It was outrageous the amount of stuff that we did, and that's kind of where I kind of found the passion for musicals, and I started falling in love with it all. But I wasn't really doing any technique training at any point. I was just doing show after show after show. So I was on stage, but pretty dreadful the whole time. And then so it wasn't until I actually started high school at about 11, 12 that they had a Friday dance class on that I started going to. So it was about 12 when I actually started doing technique classes for the first time.
Yeah, and that's quite a young age because a lot of people I've spoke to have started much later, like 18, 19. So you've kind of started it from a much younger age. And I think that musical theatre, youth theatre is kind of like the step in for a lot of people. So I think it's kind of like a wee stepping stone into them becoming the world of dance. So when you first started, what kind of styles were you doing when you first started to go into your technique classes? Was this kind of ballet stuff or was it more jazz, or where did you kind of start?
So I done primarily jazz. It was a teacher called Alex Craig, who was my jazz teacher at Drummond's, because I went to Drummond's High School. And yeah, that was every Friday kind of thing. And that's what I did for a few years. I would say when I was probably like 14, I then started doing ballet and I started doing tap. And I done modern as well. And for that, I went to the theatre school. which is now Tracy Hawk's Dance for All. So, but it used to be called the Theatre School of Scotland. And so I went there, and I just did like one class a week of ballet, one of modern and one of tap.
Yeah, and were you the only boy at these classes, or was there several?
Yeah, no, so I was literally the only boy in most of the classes. There was one other boy that would kind of come to, I think it was maybe my ballet class that there was one other boy in. But generally, I was the only boy in all of them, other than that one. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, when we were younger, there wasn't as many boys interested in it. It wasn't kind of like something that they did. So to kind of step out of the ordinary and do something that people don't do, this is kind of where the negativity and the kind of underlying bullying kind of comes into it. So did you ever experience any of that when you were kind of primary school, high school, or that transition between the two?
Fine. So yeah, so I had a really tough time actually. So my primary school days were fine. I had a great time at primary school, absolutely loved it. But I wasn't really in the dance world at that point.
Yeah.
I then moved to high school, and we used to do our dance class on a Friday, and it used to be in like the gym hall, which was kind of like in the center of the school where there was like windows all around it. So literally like I would be pas de bourreeing, turning, jump splitting, and there would be guys banging at the window and all that kind of the footballers and things like that. And so yeah, so that was kind of really tough, and it kind of got progressively worse as the kind of years went on. And when I was actually in fourth year, I kind of basically didn't go to school. I was always having excuses of like ill and not feeling well and stuff. And so my parents were obviously really worried about me, and so took me to the doctors, and I was getting checked up for loads of things, and they were like, thought there was something kind of seriously wrong with me, but it was just, the truth of it is I just didn't want to go to school. So my attendance was dreadful. And then eventually I got threatened with bricks. They basically had tied bricks into my bag and said, "We're going to break your feet, you dancing fairy," or whatever. And so at that point, that's when I kind of I went to one of my school teachers who I had kind of confided in a little bit and had spoke to, and she then contacted my parents, and so I then eventually spoke about it. And that point I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. And so I ended up leaving school early at 15, just to be able to escape it all. So yeah, so high school for me was just like, there was just nothing positive about it. The only thing that was positive about it was I found my passion in dance. And so I knew that I loved doing it. I knew what I wanted to do. However, I was terrified doing it. So the minute I could escape there, it changed my life, because I could then enjoy it and also do my passion. So yeah.
And do you know what? You just did the same thing as what you said at the start of finding a positive out of a negative situation. So it's true. You kind of have to use these negative situations to kind of propel yourself into becoming more positive. So I think that's great. And that's a lot to overcome, especially as a teenager, who just because you do something that's slightly different to the norm, you're then an easy target. So I feel like, and I think that that's amazing that you've just shared that. But then once you finish school and you've left and you're age 15, where was the next step? What was the next step for you in your career then?
So basically at that point, I didn't really know a huge amount about dance schools or performing schools or anything. And because the only way that I was allowed to leave school was to go into some form of education. So I got a place at Telford College on it was basically an aerobics course. So it was, at that point, they really didn't have a dance course. It was an NC in dance and exercise. And so basically, I actually had less dance on it than what I was doing on a weekly basis. It was like half an hour of ballet a week, an hour of jazz a week, and an hour of tap a week or something. So however, I'd done loads of aerobics, and I became like an aerobics instructor from it and things like that, which now is hilarious because I don't even remember what aerobics is. I've not done any exercise for such a long time. But it was but yeah, so I kind of done that. And while I was there, my ballet teacher was Noel Platfoot, from the manor, and she had basically said to me, oh, Murray Bird College is doing a weekend workshop in Glasgow next week, you should go along to it. Now at that point I had never heard of birds, didn't know anything about it, and so I kind of paid to go and do the workshop in Glasgow, and it was, the first day was very much a workshop, and then the second day was a workshop in the morning, and the afternoon was an audition for people who were interested in going to do the course.
Okay.
So I basically done the workshop, and they said to me, are you coming to the audition tomorrow, kind of thing. And so of course I went back to my mum and dad and was like, oh, I've been asked to go to this audition tomorrow. And they're like, Murray, you're 15 and you're at Telford and you're wanting to do what? And I was like, yeah, I just want to go to this audition tomorrow to go to London in September. And they're like, okay, you're crazy, absolutely not, kind of thing. So I kept bugging them, and eventually they were like, okay, fine, you can do it. So I then went to the audition, and I got offered a scholarship to their Easter school from the audition. So they kind of said, yeah, we love you, you're great, we want to see more of you, come to our Easter school, and so we can spend some more time with you and things. So so I went to their Easter school in London, and my parents came down to watch that, and at that point that's when they were like, okay, this is what you have to be doing, because I was surrounded by 20 boys who were all in the same position as me, who were all dancing. I literally had the best time of my life. I was surrounded by like-minded people, and and so I just loved every minute of it. And so I think my parents at that point thought, oh God, how are we going to get to go and do this course? So so that's basically how it linked from school to my training.
And then what you just mentioned there, obviously coming from the class where you were the only boy, and in the course where you were the only boy, to then being surrounded by all these other male dancers who had the same passion, the same interest. What was that difference like for you? Did you feel almost like you belonged somewhere?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think first of all, you automatically feel like a lot more confident in yourself, because you are surrounded by, because you always feel a bit of the outcast when you're on your own. Whereas in this situation, I generally felt like, oh my God, I have people here who I could be friends with and talk about dancing and talk about, because I'm not kidding, like as a kid, when I was like, from about the age of 10 up until the age of 15, I mean, I spent every night on my own at home. Like I wasn't that kind of person that had a big group of friends or whatever. I used to I just loved musicals and stuff. So I used to watch movies, musical movies, and I used to stretch and dance because that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't have anyone to do it with. So it was kind of like, at that point, I all of a sudden became, I was able to be friends with people and talk about it and things. So it definitely, that was like a massive point in my life where I felt like, oh my God, I am going to be able to have friends who have the same passion as me. It's amazing. So yeah.
And then to obviously go down to Bird and do your training down there, was there male teachers when you were down there? Did that ever make a difference, having a male to look up to?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I was quite lucky because my teacher in Edinburgh, Alex Craig, was obviously a male teacher, and choreographed Edinburgh Panto and things. And so he was quite, he was industry kind of thing at that point. So for me, I was always hearing lots about the industry and stuff. So I kind of got a lot from that. But obviously when I went to college, it was like, it's just such a healthy competition, because you're surrounded by a group of guys. And I mean, there was boys in my year who had been doing ballet since the age of 3 because their parents owned dance schools, and then there was people who had been doing much more commercial stuff who had come in. And so you had people from all different walks of life, people who were much more MT, people who were much more dancey, and so it was just really like, it was fascinating. And then having teachers who were male, who were able to kind of guide you and say, okay, we've come from this background, it's just constantly inspirational, and gives you that kind of energy and that passion that you're like, okay, I want to achieve this. So yeah, no, I absolutely love it.
I think that's such an important thing, to have people that you can look up to. And I think when I talk to some of my younger kids, they don't realize that even the younger kids are looking up to them, and it's constantly like a down or up the way of people who are all, you know, aspiring to be someone. So after you then finished your college, you then had to go into the big world of auditioning and actually performing. And how did that step then take from now you've done your training, now you have to be professional?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was really lucky. When I first graduated, I got offered 2 or 3 different cruise contracts right away.
Okay.
Now, basically, I had the best 3 years of my life at Birds. I did have some complications because I went to college when I was 16, I was still very short and hadn't really fully developed.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of my training like having problems with just aches and pains and growing pains and things like that. So basically, when I had got to third year, they had basically turned around to me and said, look, we know that you've had to take some time out just because of your body and things like that. And I mean, I was always in college every single day. I never missed a day. However, it was just some days that I was in too much pain to kind of jump around and stuff because it was intense, obviously doing 12-hour days training sometimes and things. And so they basically said, look, if you want to stay on for an extra term or two to do some more training, then you don't have to pay us. We're more than happy for you to stay on, just whatever you want to do. And so I kind of had thought to myself, look, I'm going to do some auditions for the first few months and see how I get on. Obviously, we could audition from the kind of May, June time and didn't start back till September. And I had got offered a couple of cruises and things. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to see what else comes up before. And then I'll decide nearer the time what I'm going to do. And then I got offered a USA tour of The Merry Widow, which is an operetta. Had never been to America before. I had always wanted to be in America. We were going to be doing New York, we were doing LA. I was like, how can I not go and do that? So, and even though I had kind of studied musical theatre, and operetta was like a little bit different for me, I thought, do you know what? I have to do this job. So yeah, so I ended up just going straight into work. But then I obviously got to America at the age of 19 and you can't drink and you can't do a lot of stuff. So I kind of was like, oh, I should have maybe waited a couple of years before I went on tour with a bunch of crazy performers around America and I was only 19. So I loved it.
So. And then you've done so many different performing things around that and from there onwards. And like I said when I introduced you at the start, you've obviously now kind of taken a step more into the director and the producer and the choreographer kind of side of roles. So you're kind of almost taking that little step to now being almost the person who takes the auditions and does it. So you're kind of flipped it completely on its head. So when did you kind of start going from the performer side into kind of more of the other side of art?
Okay, so I mean, I was really lucky. I was performing in a show called Best of Musicals, and this was about 11 years ago or something, so it's quite a while ago. And basically the choreography was very suspect in it, and I was like, this is not great, kind of thing. And then obviously I had been working with the producer and the choreographer and director and everything, and I had kind of basically suggested that I was like, oh, I'd love to choreograph and do blah, blah, blah. And they basically had said to me, well, actually, we want someone to choreograph this finale at the point when the choreographer couldn't do it. And so I then went in and choreographed You Can't Stop the Beat from Hairspray, which has actually been like my token choreography that I have been doing literally for the last, I mean, that choreography is as old as I am pretty much. And so, so I choreographed You Can't Stop the Beat, and I did that. And basically the producers and the whole company loved it, and they were like, and so basically the guy who was choreographing it didn't get asked back the year after, and then I got the job as choreographer. And then after that, they then offered me the role of directing it as well. And then I was kind of like, look, at that point, the cast were all very like European, and there wasn't very many Brits. And I basically was like, there's so many amazing dancers in the UK. Let me bring some dancers over from the UK and thing. And so eventually they're just like, okay, well, you cast it. We trust you to do it. So it then kind of became a show that toured Europe for 10 years that I was directing, choreographing and casting for. Which was really nice because I was able to do castings in Scotland as well as in London and things like that. I was able to use a lot of like students and graduates and people that I had worked with and that I knew that I trusted to go on tour with it. And that kind of toured around Europe for 3 or 4 months every kind of December through to January, through to kind of March time. So so that was kind of like my stepping stone into it. And then the thing about choreography and things is once you've kind of got something on your CV, it's a lot easier. It's just getting that kind of first break. and then, yeah, P&O Cruises were then looking for someone to go in and choreograph a couple of cruise ship shows.
Okay.
It was someone that I knew was supposed to be doing it and got injured, and so I then stepped in and then flew on, joined the ships, and joined Aurora a couple of times, and then just put together shows for them. So, and I done that actually when I was really young, so it put me in good stead for moving forward, being able to do that kind of things, because I obviously already had them on my CV.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so yeah, and now I'm working with a company called TED, the entertainment department, and they have 4 of the Marella cruise ships, and I'm a kind of creative consultant for them. So I'm involved in the casting of it. I'm also involved just creatively with the shows, and then I also direct and choreograph a few of their shows as well. So so yeah, it's kind of been it's been a really nice journey, and for me, I think it's really important, obviously, because I have the school, which we've not even spoke about yet. But it's great because it keeps me very much in the industry.
Yeah.
So because I'm seeing on a regular basis the people that are graduating from all the different colleges, and it just kind of gives me that insight to where the standard is and where the talent is, because it changes so often, and what the style is and everything. It's kind of making me very current, even though I'm getting older. So.
Aren't we all? But yeah, moving on to the next part is obviously MGA. When MGA first started, I was kind of there maybe like just after the first year of you kind of starting it, and the progress you've had is like, it just blew up like so big. And obviously for most people watching this, they'll know all about MGA, but can you go back and explain like how you even got into this from the first place then?
Yeah, so basically, while I was doing Grease, I'd done the musical Grease in Switzerland. And it was one of those really cool contracts. It was like a kind of Stadttheater, which is when you like, they have an opera company and they have a ballet company and they have a musical company. So throughout the month, there's like different shows that perform. So we would only really do 1 week a month as our contract. So they would fly you from wherever you were to wherever you would want to go. So once a month, I would fly to Switzerland to do a week of shows, and then they would fly me back home again. So at that point, I was doing a lot of guest workshops and a lot of guest teaching. So I was in Telford College. I was in at Dance for All. I was kind of doing different guest teaching and things. And basically, they were like, oh my God, this is really great. And I was then talking a lot about like industry stuff and things like that. And I was like, do you know what? Maybe we should run an industry workshop for a week. And so Andrew and I Andrew who obviously is a lot more from an acting background, and then I'm more from a dance background. We were like, let's get someone in from a musical point of view. And so we got Chris Hatt, who was actually the musical director on Billy Elliot in the West End. So he came to Edinburgh, and the 3 of us basically put this whole industry audition technique workshop on. And we were blown away by the amount of people that came to it and the feedback from it. And it was just amazing. And so we basically just set up this series of workshops that happened. And they were just so popular, and people were really wanting to learn from the industry. And it was kind of bringing the London side of it to Edinburgh. So we kind of done that for a little while. And we then decided, look, why don't we start doing stuff for kids and things like that, where they can work on a kind of weekly basis. So we started up stage academies, and I mean, it's been one of those journeys where the stage academy kids got to that age where they were like, okay, we want to do more now. And so we were like, okay, so let's start Fierce Theatre School, which is where they go from doing 3 hours a week to 7 hours a week, and it's much more technique based, and it's a lot more intense, and they have to audition to get in. And so we then done that. We then, when we had Fierce, we had people who were actually doing like other full-time courses, different places, who were also coming to Fierce to kind of get that musical theatre training. So we were like, oh, maybe we should be running a musical theatre course. So we then opened up the musical theatre course. And then that kind of built up over the years. And then, of course, we're like, well, the next thing is to set up a dance course, and then set up an acting course, and then have degree programs, and then have an agency. So it kind of like, everything that we have set up has been because there's been a need for it, if that makes sense. Because the minute we've set it up, we've been like, okay, so we now have students who are on a musical theatre course, but we have to help them get to the London point. So we need to have an agency that is going to help them to then get into that market. So it's always just been a development. And I think that's kind of where the success comes from. It's not that we've just went, bam, here is something. It's been the case that we've been like, okay, these students feel like they need this, or these students are wanting this, or we need to help them connect into this kind of thing. So so it's always kind of grown from what we initially had and what we felt like people needed to move forward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it is crazy because, like you say, like when you list them, it just keeps growing, and it's so good because it's kind of tackling all different parts. And I think for a lot of Scottish people, especially boys who maybe were the only boy in their dance school, to then go straight to London is such a big step. And I think a lot of people think, I need to go train in London. That's the only place I can go. But to now have more places up here, now there is obviously other places, but to have somewhere where you've got so many boys in full-time training, I think that that's such an important thing for Scotland. And I think that it's something that was long needed. And I think if that had existed when you were younger, you might not have gone down to London, and you might have been able to. So it's like creating something for the future generation that we didn't have.
Exactly, 100%. And I mean, like, it was really difficult going to London as a 16-year-old and living there and things. And so I think, did I get the most out of my training? Probably not, because I, as a 16-year-old, was dealing with having to know how to cook and how to do my washing and things that I had never really dealt with before. And so there was like rough times, do you know what I mean, being there. Whereas I think of as a 16, 17-year-old, if I was able to stay in Scotland and still be able to do that, then I think it would have been a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think and I also think MJ would not have been as successful if there wasn't the need for it. You know what I mean? I feel like the success has come from the fact that we're in one of the biggest art cities in the world.
Yeah.
And we're kind of doing something that is kind of different, and something that that we feel like we're kind of trying to bring that London style training to Edinburgh. And I think nowadays as well, it's so difficult because as things grow, the numbers are growing. And I know from my point of view now, as someone who does casting, I mean, we put out a spotlight casting for a ship or for like my European tour, and I will get about 1,500 submissions. Now I'm looking for 10 dancers.
Yeah.
1,500 submissions. How do you cut that down? You know what I mean? And so for us, our aim has always been that we will stay as a small school. And I mean, we've got 200 full-time students. That's not a small school. However, we have 30 in each course maximum. So we have 30 in first year musical theatre, 30 in second year, 30 in third year. And then acting, we've got the numbers, and we've got dance. So they're all separated into their different schools, and they're all managed very differently, instead of us having 150 in a year, which kind of what does happen in some places. So yeah, so for us, it's like we always kind of want to stick to that number, because it means that we can manage people's expectations as well. It's like you're going to have people who come in who we think, okay, they're going to walk into a West End show, or they're going to walk into being on ships, and they're perfect to be a can-can dancer in the Moulin Rouge in Paris. Do you know what I mean? So it means that we can manage it more, because we can look at them as individuals when they get into third year, instead of having to look at 150 people and go, oh, what are we going to do with them all? So
no, you're so right. You're so right. And I also think as well, in this industry, although it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, there's still so much talent in Scotland that's still coming, and it's so amazing that they're all kind of coming still just to do it. And like you say, it wouldn't be successful if there wasn't a need for it. So I think you've got something exciting and new, and I think that's why it's worked. I think you've kind of got that little niche in the market which people are wanting to do. So I think it's a really amazing thing.
And you know what's crazy as well, right? Is the fact, even though the fact that there is so many people doing it now, we will put out a casting, and I still can't find enough boys.
Yeah.
Still to this day, we are always short for boys. We're always desperate to find boys for the job. So and it's a really tough situation, because this whole conversation is the reason for that. You know what I mean? You've got kids who do it from a young age, and I think there's a lot of boys who do it from a young age. However, they get to those teenage years and then they give up. And they give up. And I don't think it's generally just because they don't want to dance anymore. I think it's because the mental strain of having to deal with all of the stuff that goes on
Yeah.
is too much. And so they kind of go for an easier life. And that breaks my heart, because I know that I could give them work and they could
Exactly.
spend their life having the most amazing time sailing around the world on a ship and singing and dancing. And yet I am currently struggling to find enough people to fill the
Exactly.
gap.
And the thing is as well, like, it's almost like saying to them, like, you don't understand, men in this industry will always succeed if they are passionate and they'll work hard and they're talented. And if you're just going to throw that all away because of other people's opinions or society's opinions of not fitting in, it's like,
Yeah.
keep going, because you will succeed. You will.
I know. And I mean, the one thing that is like the one thing that I always try and say to males in the industry is, look, you are going to have 3 or 4 years of absolute hell. It's going to be the worst time.
Yeah.
However, if you come through those 3 or 4 years, the rest of your life is going to be amazing. Because I mean, everyone that I know that's in this industry is just so grateful, because I mean, you get to go and stand on stage in front of thousands of people and sing and dance and do what you love and connect with the music and have literally the best time of your life, and you
Yeah.
get paid for it. I mean, what?
Exactly.
So, and I mean, even now that I'm not performing anymore, it's like I go and watch one of the students that I've taught on stage and something, and literally I am like an emotional wreck. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because it's like you've seen them come from someone who has gone through all this hardship and gone through the nightmare
Yeah.
that is kind of high school, and then you see them just like embracing themselves now as a professional performer and absolutely living the dream. So for
Yeah.
me, that is just as rewarding as anything else.
And a lot of things that people keep saying is the people who were putting them down at this situation are now applauding them. So it's almost like they've come all the way in a full circle.
Exactly. And I think as well, I mean, those bullies I had a really tough time with. However, I do kind of feel sorry for them, because I've actually met a few of them since I've left, because they're now working retail or whatever, and I've seen them, and of course, the minute I see them, like fear comes over me, and
So
then I then speak to them, and absolutely they have no recollection. Like they can't even remember being that mean to me, and my life is scarred because of it.
exactly.
Whereas they're just kids who are immature and don't know what they're doing, and
So
at that and they get to this point in their life and they're like, oh hi, how are you? Do you know what I mean? And you're just like,
yeah,
do you remember any of this? Um,
exactly. And it's
so
funny
yeah,
because I think a lot of it can be hidden behind banter and jokes, but in reality, that's not how we're perceiving it. That's how they're saying it. But it is really hard, and especially to tell a 12-year-old kid, like, don't worry, it will get better. But I think these messages and these conversations are exactly what needs to happen. Now, one of the things I'd like to touch on with you was you do a lads week in MGA, and that is usually summer holiday time. And why did that start in the first place then?
so so basically when we launched our dance course,
Mhm.
I was kind of like, okay, so I'm going to go around Scotland and do some promotion. So I kind of spoke to lots of dance schools. Actually, I seen you spoke to Stephen from Fraserburgh the other day, who I've been in. I know, I love him. So like I went around like all the kind of schools, and basically offered a free workshop,
Yeah.
and where I went in for an hour and taught some like kind of cheesy musical theatre choreography, and kind of had a chat to them about our courses and what we offer across the board, from dancing, acting, and MT. But it was very much a dance kind of workshop. And I was gobsmacked, because I was going from school to school to school, and the amount of schools that I went into that had one boy. And
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, so there's one boy there, there's one boy there, there's one boy there. And then I was like, and these guys, I mean, were sometimes getting taught by like female teachers all the time.
Mhm.
You could kind of see them sitting on their own a lot of the time when everyone else was kind of like doing their thing. And I was just like, do you know what? I absolutely hate this. Like, I want to give them something that is
Yeah.
going to like make them feel like I felt when I first went to Birds. Like that transition, that workshop that I'd done at Easter that changed my life,
Yeah.
I wanted to offer something like that. But then the problem is, I was like, look, there's people from all over Scotland. How are they going to be able to afford to do it? And so basically, I spoke to MGA. So I spoke to Marcella and Andrew, who own it. with me, and we made the decision that MJA would personally fund this week for boys. And so what we would do is we would find a full male staff to come in for the week, and we would basically say that any boy over the age of 13 or 14, I think it is able to come and spend a week, because that means if they're coming from Aberdeen or something, they'll have to obviously pay for their travel and accommodation, but they don't have to pay for any kind of training. We do it for acting, dance, and musical theatre, and basically we have a timetable scheduled for it. And then we do like a social thing as well. We normally go bowling on a Tuesday night, which is just that kind of that fun aspect where everyone can get to know each other a little bit better. And if I'm honest, the first year I think we had 20, and I think last year we had about 75 boys who came to it. And that was people from Ireland, people from all over Scotland came together for the Boys Week. And and it just continues to grow. So, I mean, that's something I'm literally so proud of, because I do feel like it also makes a lot of the boys from that then realize and actually come to our Fierce Theatre School as well. So if they're in distance where they can travel, a lot of them come in and they're like, oh my God, there's so many boys here. And then a lot of the boys, I mean, our Fierce Theatre School now, I think it's almost 50-50 with boys and girls. We've got a lot of boys now. And so they then realize it's a lot of boys that go to Fierce Theatre School, and so a lot of them then join in, so it kind of has really evened things out for us, which is just really amazing. And I feel like that's when people start to then get confidence in themselves, and as soon as people find the confidence in themselves, that's when they become more confident dancers and performers, because they know who they are, so they can then start putting that into their dancing. So
no, I totally agree. And if that had existed when we were younger, imagine what could have happened. It's almost creating these brand new experiences for boys to feel comfortable from a younger age, to realize that schools can be rubbish, but actually follow your passion and you will find like-minded people who will all have the same thing. The thing is as well, like one thing with Simon Says Dance, and I'm sure you'll see this all the time because of who our friends are, but it's the friendships that it creates as well. And just having, even if they don't all go on to be performers and they do it as a hobby, like it's the relationships that they all create. And I love when I see things on social media of them meeting up from different schools and they're all friends. And I think that's so cool that you've allowed that to become a safe place where that can happen. And you did that with MJ for me, and look at all the friends that we're still all together. So I think that's one of the most amazing parts of being a teacher as well.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I look just now, and I mean, like, I get emotional all the time when I see stuff like that as well. Like, for example, we done a virtual concert the other day where we had like graduates from over the years doing like a musical theatre singing concert. And like just watching that, I was like, I mean, it was so lovely to see people from all over the years coming together. And then when I see like groups of students over the years who are still having Zoom quizzes and catching up with each other and things, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just like amazing. And I feel like it is like, it's part and parcel of it. The creative arts is about friendships. It's about being able to dance with people and duet with people and coming together as a kind of, as a unit. And I think a lot of people in the arts are so kind of like chatty and out there kind of thing, that it does build a lot of relationships. And it is something that I'm kind of super proud of. And I do see, like, for example, these guys who come into our Boys Scholarship Week, like they then all vanish off to their other parts of the country or to other countries. And then the year after they come back and then they're like, hi, how are you? Like kind of thing, catching up. And then it's like, oh, actually, and they're like, oh yeah, we've been catching up over the, like we keep in touch and things. And they're all Facebook friends or Instagram followers or whatever. And do you know what I mean? And it becomes like, it's such a nice environment. So so it does, it's beautiful. I really love that part of it.
Yeah, it just also makes you realize how old we're getting when you see all these kids.
I turn 40 next year and I'm not sure how I feel about it.
It's just an age. It's just an age. Well, honestly, I just want to say a massive thank you for speaking today and being so honest, because I feel like that's what people sometimes need to hear. And I think they know you as Murray from MJ, but maybe to actually hear your backstory, that's really important. And I think that that'll maybe give other people the confidence to continue and to be like, right, well, look at how successful he's become. Look at all the different things and the doors that it's opened. And you've suffered from all this hardship. And I think that that's exactly what these conversations are for. So really, thank you so much for being able to do that with me today.
No, thank you for asking me. I've absolutely loved it. So,
Yeah. I'll see you soon. Bye.
bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch Simon Talks Dance Date with Mr. Murray Grant. Hopefully you've enjoyed learning about his process in the dance industry and obviously all about MGA as well. Now, if you've got any feedback or if there's anything specific you'd like me to talk about in the next few interviews, then let me know and I will do my best to try and include this. Make sure you follow us on our social media. So we've got our YouTube, we've got our Facebook, and we've got our Instagram. Apart from that, have a lovely day and we'll see you at the next one.